And now, you're tuned into RBLR, the home of Tampa Bay's Reveler Sports.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to your RBLR Rays show. With me is Pat, as we sit here where nothing bad ever goes wrong and nothing sad ever happens. How are you doing, Pat?
Yeah, exactly. Everything is fine. Nothing has happened. It's another slow news week in Rays baseball.
Super slow.
I mean, after the revelation that was re-signing Erasmo last week, I think we got everything out of the way. I think we're done, right? There's nothing usually to do for the Rays. I think we can just sit tight and relax. Oh, wait! Something has happened. We're probably going to have to talk about it.
And if you want to be a part of us discussing what we are going to be talking about, please like, subscribe, share, comment. There's a lot of things to discuss on today's episode, as we all know. And please feel free to share what you guys are thinking too. We'd love to go back and forth with you guys and just see what the temperature is from your perspective as well. Don't be afraid to hit us up on social media. Don't be afraid to hit me up in my DMs, talk with me. I'll talk you off the ledge if I need to. I will gladly do so. But like, subscribe, share, continue to build what we're building here as we go through this off season. We'll stop beating around the bush and just get right into it. Tyler Glasnow was traded. I was officially finalized Saturday when he went his extension. His $135 million extension was finalized on over the weekend, and it's officially announced. The full trade, of course, is not only Glasnow but Manuel Margot was traded to the Los Angeles Dodgers, and along with $4 million in cash, which I believe is covering some of the salary that those guys are bringing with them. It's about $35 million worth of salary between them is what they're bringing over there. And in return, the Rays received Ryan Pepio, I believe is how you pronounce his name, and Johnny DeLuca. Pepio is a starter who has MLB experience and is likely to slide into the rotation, back end of the rotation. And Johnny DeLuca is an outfielder, probably would slide into a very similar role that Margot was already playing. He's a lot younger, obviously. He has some things that we like there, so we'll talk about all of that going into it. But Pat, when you hear that headline, when you heard that headline, when you knew when it was no longer we could ignore it, what were the first thoughts?
It finally happened. I mean, it was kind of a dark cloud that was looming over the heads of the Rays for what seemed like all off season. We on this podcast often were saying that the Rays did not have to trade Glasnow, but it's definitely a possibility that they were entertaining, and they entertained it all the way to a deal. And yeah, my first thought was, gosh, it's actually happened. And I was sad. I'm not going to lie to you. Even though I knew it was coming, it didn't really take away the sting. Now, there's lots of ways to kind of digest and break down this trade. But there is also something about baseball and sports where we do form connections to players. And losing a guy that we've had for the past 5-6 years hurts. He's one of the more likable guys we've had on the team in recent memory, and it's going to suck to lose him. He was awesome, and I wish him all the best in LA. And before I even thought about the return, I said, "Man, I'm gonna miss him." What about you, Zach?
Yeah, I mean, I felt the exact same way. I mean, he's been a huge part of this team. The Rays acquired him back in 2018 from the Pittsburgh Pirates. And he has been a huge part of this organization ever since then. And it's crazy to think that we're gonna be here on opening day in this coming season. He's not going to be part of the rotation. He's been my favorite pitcher on the Rays since Chris Archer left. Ironically, and even when Blake Snell was doing what he was doing, and he was phenomenal, I've always been a huge Tyler Glasnow fan. So seeing him go is really sad. He is, to my mind, still, when he is right, one of the most, if not the most dominant pitcher in baseball. When he's got the fastball going, when he's rolling that curveball off the table, when he's got his other off speed going, the slutter, whatever he wants to call it, when he's got that going, he's unhittable, he's dominant, he's striking guys out, and it was just a pure joy to watch him pitch. And it's a bummer. It's a super big bummer to lose him. And it's also a bummer to lose Margot. I mean, as much as we kind of expected that one, I'm not as emotional about that because I kind of expected it to happen, but it's a bummer because Margot was a huge part of this team over the last several seasons too. Came to us from the Padres, and he was a phenomenal defensive outfielder who had the knack for being clutch, and really in moments when we really needed him to come through, he had a knack for coming through. And so it's just tough. It's a tough pill to swallow. And regardless of, what else is connected to getting in return for them, it's just a tough pill to swallow. I wish that I had a more positive spin on, and we'll talk more positively about the return later. I wish I was more positive, but I'm not going to be positive as we continue to discuss this because I've got some frustrations to vent about this trade in general. But before we do that, before I say all of that, I do want to say that when you look at this trade from purely a assets exchanged, if you just look at the assets that were exchanged, I'm pretty happy with it because if we operate under the conceit, which I guess we have to, that the Rays were never going to extend Glasnow, if you operate under that conceit, it's a really good return because you're trading what in the Rays' eyes is 1 year of a guy and 1 year of Margot, who would then not going to extend him either, for 8-9 years of talent on the return that we're going to get under control. I believe Pepio still has an option and DeLuca has 2 options left. So you've got a lot of play with those guys. You got a lot of flexibility with those guys that are, bringing, that we're bringing to the team. So if we're just talking about the assets exchanged, and again, both of those guys have a lot of promise. So when you're just talking about assets exchanged, it's a great move. It's just there's just some other things that are frustrating about it. But when you look at the trade overall, what are your thoughts?
I think, I agree with you that what we got was really, really good. I'm really happy with the return. And I think that does come down to I don't think the Rays felt at all forced to trade Glasnow. I think while he was on a big salary, comparatively speaking to what the Rays typically offer people, I don't think the Rays were going, we have to trade this guy. He cannot be on our roster next year. We cannot spend this $25 million on Glasnow. I think he would have stuck around if a good offer did not come around. And that's why we managed to get a good of a return as we did. I think, the Rays really, really value Pepio and DeLuca. And I think that comes in 2 things. One, they paid in $4 million extra. So it means that they think that eventually Pepio and DeLuca are going to be worth $4 million more valuable than Glasnow and Margot. If we throw back to a while ago, the Rays did this when they traded Jake Bauers away for Yandy Diaz. And the quote was at the time, we think that Yandy Diaz is going to be $5 million extra worthwhile than Jake Bauers. So they absolutely were not forced to trade him. I don't want to push this idea that it's a salary dump. I think with Manuel Margot, his position on the team was likely to be a 4th outfielder, and to pay $10 million a year for a 4th outfielder, you can probably get a better value on the dollar for that. Considering Margot used to kind of be getting more playing time, but with Lowe being so good, Arozarena being so good, and Siri being the lockdown center fielder, Margot's playing time was going to be limited. And for a kind of pinch hitter, defensive replacement, 4th outfielder type, $10 million for Margot, they were probably thinking, we could probably do better value-wise on the dollar for Margot, and that's why they opted to shift him. But Glasnow, the return, I think, is excellent. And I think that's only because they were holding out for the right deal.
Yeah, Pam, while she is not a fan of losing Tyler, she is a fan of the return. And I said this on Twitter a couple of days ago, and I said the Rays are basically telling people that we're not giving up Tyler Glasnow unless you're going to give us the next Tyler Glasnow. And while Pepio doesn't necessarily profile as the type of pitcher that Glasnow was from a pure power stuff standpoint, I do think what they got in return was another potential frontline starter and MLB ready starting pitcher. And they basically were like, well, yeah, if you're going to give us a younger version that's way cheaper, that we could control for way longer, for way cheaper, yeah, we're going to take you up on that. That's exactly what they did. And you can't fault them for that. Just to quote Neander, what he said from the horse's mouth on this, said there was a lot of interest, and that in and of itself forced us to be open-minded. From there, the opportunity to get what we believe is a really strong return in the 2 players that we got back to be in our mix sooner rather than later gave us the confidence that it was worth the trade-off as we look to continue to try to be as competitive as possible, not just next year, but the years beyond. And I think it makes a whole lot of sense. The 2 guys that you brought in are definitely going to be a part of your team going forward. And I completely agree with what you're pointing out about Margot being a $10 million 4th outfielder. There are a lot of teams where Margot could start. Lots of teams, lots and lots. He may start in LA. I haven't really gone and done a deep dive into LA's outfield. I don't know if he'll start there, but he could start for a lot of teams. But when you look at the guys in front of him on the Rays, all 3 guys that are in front of him are better than him in some aspect. Randy is, a little bit more of a complete package deal with the power and the speed, although he's not as great defensively. Jose Siri is the best defender in MLB, one of, if not the best defender in MLB, and has a lot of power that Margot doesn't have. Josh Lowe is also kind of a complete package. He's got the chance to be like a 5-tool type of guy and rarely brings a power piece that, because he's honestly, you could really say that he's a 5th outfielder behind Rayleigh even when you look at the way the outfield stacks up. So it really doesn't make sense to pay that guy $10 million. He's a very valuable guy, and I don't think he's not worth $10 million when you're just talking about in the economy of the MLB what his value is. But to the Rays, it doesn't really fit. It just does not really lock into what the Rays' current roster construction is. Makes way more sense to have that kind of spot on the roster taken up by someone who's making kind of league minimum type money or just very low salary type money. So it's a very good move when it comes to that perspective. So I think we can agree it was a good deal. Eric Neander did a good job. Eric Neander cooked. He's always going to cook, and he cooked once again. Well, we're never expect him to not cook. He did a great job. So as we sort of, I have another, take I want to give on this from a different perspective. But before I do that, let's talk a little bit about some of our best memories of Glasnow and Margot. Do you have any really strong memories that you just stick out in your mind that you want to just kind of reminisce on it for a minute here when we're talking about Glasnow and Margot?
I got one of each. The Glasnow one is less specific because there wasn't, with starting pitches, unless they throw a complete game shutout or do something big in the playoffs, it's harder to nail down. But I do want to really highlight the first half of the 2021 season where he was just nails, and I was convinced he was going to win the Cy Young Award. And during that first couple of months before he went down with elbow issues, he was unbelievable. And I just remember just being so bedazzled, stars in my eyes every time I watched Tyler Glasnow pitch then. And with Manuel Margot, there's a few, because he earned the nickname Manuel Margot ahead a few times. Particularly last season, I remember he hit a big go-ahead home run against the Mariners on Apple TV. I remember that. And there was also the big catch he made against the Astros in the ALCS as well, where he went tumbling over the wall. And also that whole 2020 playoff run, him and Willie Adames had a kind of romance thing going on.
Yes.
That was super sweet and cool. And they'd always just pan to those two in the dugout, just hanging out, being bros, and being just a really fun clubhouse presence and being cheerleaders at all times. And I think the clubhouse is really going to miss that element from Margot, how much he helped the clubhouse and how nice of a guy he was. Before I let you go off on what I think you're going to go off on, I also just want to mention that it's a nice touch that they managed to get Glasnow to LA. He's a California guy, and he would, I think, if he got to pick any team to be traded to, you would have went to the Dodgers. So I think the Rays keep that kind of stuff in mind when they're talking about the guys that they really care about. They really want to do right by them, and if they're going to move them, they want to move them to as ideal of a circumstance as possible. And I just want to shout out the Rays front office for doing that for Tyler.
Yeah, and I mean, that's a really, really good point that they got him to a good place, and they got him somewhere they're going to extend him. He deserves the money that he got. He deserves that extension. He's an excellent pitcher. He's going to be worth, I think, every penny of it, especially if he stays healthy. When I think about memories of him, there's one game in particular. It's a very specific game that really stands out. When you talk about the beginning of that 2021 season, on, I believe, it was first couple of weeks into that season, they played the Rangers, I believe it was. Glasnow had an outing where he went 7 2/3, and he struck out 14 batters, I believe it was. Only walked one guy, didn't allow any runs. That was a start to where I'll never forget watching it. And the curveball was rolling that entire. It was like watching that game. You were like, there's nothing. They can do nothing to this man. He's completely invincible. And it really set the tone for what we thought was going to be a Cy Young season from him. I'll never forget that start. He had many other starts like that. And of course, Margot, I remember back in 2022 when we were in a very dark period, as you kind of mentioned, where we were not scoring many runs. We were really struggling. And Manuel Margot had somehow managed to win us a couple of games in there. Really, really, really cool to see that. And it was just fun to be a part of those moments with these guys. It's sad to see him go. And the thing that is, to me, upsetting about seeing them go is we talked about how we both agree Glasnow being traded was not a salary dump in the sense of they weren't going to pay him the $25 million that he was owed. They didn't want to pay him that. I think they would have. I think if they wouldn't got the really good offer they got from the Dodgers, they would not have, they would not have paid him. And to be fair, there are some issues like, with Glasnow. His performances in the playoff have not been phenomenal, and he is injury prone. So certainly there's some trepidation with signing him long term. But let's be real, we all know that they never would have signed him long term. And I think that's where my issue gets into it. And I haven't had a chance to talk about this because it's never come up while I've been on the show. But I really don't like Stu Sternberg. And the reason why I really don't like Stu Sternberg is because it's actually really, really simple. He employs two of the best people, and they employ all the way down the best two people in all of baseball, in my opinion, at their job. Kevin Cash and Eric Neander. They do the best job they can possibly do at what they're doing. And they employ the people going down from them that also do the phenomenal work. They have the best run organization in baseball. It is not close. When you look at what they do every single year, it's the best run organization in baseball. So that's why it frustrates me to no end that the best people in baseball have their resources arbitrarily limited by the owner. I mean, maybe we could argue that he's being a little bit more generous now than he has been in the past. I don't think you can argue. Eric Neander and Kevin Cash's ability to make moves is limited by the resources that are given to them by Stu Sternberg. I think on a season in, season out basis, maybe there's been some give and take on some things. But I mean, like, just if we just look at the numbers, I did some research this morning. I looked through the Rays payroll through the years. Did you know the Rays have never been in the top 20 of payroll? Ever. Oof. Did you know the Rays have never spent more than $75 million ever? At least at the start of the year. I'll give them credit at the start of the year. Okay. And my issue with all of this, right, is surely, and of course, every team, they have limitations put on them. But the limitations that are put on this team are like so high relative to the rest of the league. If the Rays ran just a league average payroll, right? So like, for example, last year they ran a payroll of $64 million at the start of the year. We can get it. By the way, these numbers that I'm about to give you they basically add up very similar as far as the disparity if you go to the end of the year, but I just went with the beginning of the year because that was the easier number. $64 million at the beginning of the year, 28th in MLB. If they just move to a median pay, just the middle of the pack average, like pure average, which is about 150 million in the last years, that's $86 million. Can you imagine if you gave Eric Neander here you go. Here's $86 million to use however you see fit. Could you imagine what this team could be capable of? You could fit Shohei Ohtani's his AAV for his insane deal he just made. You can fit that neatly and tidily in that $86 million. You could fit an extension for Glasnow, and you could go sign Yamamoto for that money, who's probably going to get about 30 to 40 million AAV. You could get both of those guys in that little window. And you could probably extend Paredes and whoever else you may like to in that window as well. So that's where my frustration comes in, is you have the best people in baseball running your organization, and you, because you just don't want to, you don't have the ability, or you do not want to use your ability to give these people the resources that they need to succeed. And I understand that every team has limitations, and yes, every team, not everyone's going to spend as much as the Dodgers was. I'm not asking for that. I'm not asking you to spend $200 million. I'm asking for you to spend the league minimum, the league average, not minimum, the league average. Just be average. Just be average. You don't think that they've earned that? You don't think that the performance that these guys have put up has earned that? You don't think some of these guys that play for this team have earned that to be a part of an organization that it just supplies the median, the average amount of capital to succeed for this team? And it's just really frustrating to watch because you see this year in and year out, and like you don't. I mean, maybe it's possible, and I'll give it's possible. Maybe even if they could have signed Glasnow to an extension, maybe Neander decides, I don't want to. I don't think he's worth that. I disagree with that evaluation, but maybe that would be his evaluation. But he's not you cannot look me in the eyes with a straight face and tell me that he was given the chance to even make that evaluation because he knew that he was going to have to let him go. So of course he makes the move he makes and it does an incredible job of negotiating, by the way, to get what he gets. Because he's the best in the business, and you are handcuffing the best in the business because you don't want to spend, and it's really, really frustrating to watch. And it's just frustrating. And I, by the way, Stu, I didn't forget about that little stunt you tried to pull with your Toronto banner or your Montreal banner that you may or may not ever have existed. I didn't forget. I've not forgotten. And I know he's never going to get any kind of heat or any kind of like actual journalism thrown his way from anybody in the Tampa market. It's just not going to happen. So maybe I'm going to be the only one shouting at clouds to say I'm really frustrated about this. And I know I'm shouting at clouds, but I'm going to shout because it's really frustrating to watch. And I just wish that these amazing people that we have would have the ability to spend what they would be able to spend if they were just a median average team and have that level of success that, or they've had this level of success. I just wish they would be able to spend that's sort of equivalent to the level of success they had. And I know that spending isn't everything. And there's plenty of teams in even just recent memory who did not spend a lot of money and were very successful, the Rays included. I know all this is true, but you can't tell me but you can't look at what the amazing stuff that these guys do. And you can't tell me that this team wouldn't be better if you gave these amazing people more ammunition to fire with. I'm done. All right, I'm done. I've said what I need to say.
Could I just ask our producer to clip that real quick because that's gonna do numbers on Twitter later.
It's just so frustrating, and I wish I wasn't so like angry about this and so like red in the face about it. And I wish I could, because like the logical side of me is just like it is what it is. Given what they were given, they did a phenomenal job. But I can't pretend like I don't see the other teams' payrolls out there. And I'm not even talking about the Dodgers or the Mets. I'm talking about the Cardinals. That's what I'm asking for. I'm not asking for, for all that kind of money. I'm just asking for some of it because this team's already amazing. Could they have already won a World Series by now? If they could have just had gone over just a little bit more, gotten that one more piece that maybe pushed them over the edge. Maybe not.
Yeah.
But we'll never know because they never will. And
the way I see payroll is I see it as it's almost like a margin for error. Like the higher your payroll, the higher your margin for error. The Rays can only exist as they are today because we've got the best in the business. If you did not have the best in the business, the Rays would not work. They would not work unless you had the best talent scouting, the best analytic department, the best general manager, president of baseball operations, the best coaching and management. If you didn't have those, the Rays would not work and we would be the Oakland A's. Yeah. Like that's the reality. And because we have the best in the business, we're fine. But there could come a time, there very well could come a time where Neander decides a big money offer is coming in elsewhere, or Kevin Cash gets lured away elsewhere. And then obviously it would take a while to dismantle the whole culture from there. But there could come a time where this perpetual kind of spinning wheel of eternal competitiveness, something goes wrong, right? So like we get terrible regression somewhere. We get awful variables. We have a season a bit like, I don't know, like the Yankees had last year where like everyone got injured. The BABIP was bad. Everything goes wrong. Okay. then what happens? If everything goes wrong for 3 years in a row, what happens then? We have to start over. And teams like the Red Sox, teams like the Cubs, teams like the Cardinals, they can constantly rebuild quicker because they can acquire top level talent and extend them like a Paul Goldschmidt or a Nolan Arenado, and then keep them long term, which lets them contend quicker. And we don't get to do that. Their margin for error, if things go wrong for a big market team, they can repair themselves quicker. The Rays will have to go through a long rebuilding period, just like other teams that don't like to spend, like the A's, like the Orioles, like the Pirates. They have to go through these horrible, horrible rebuilds. And luckily the Rays are set up really well where we can be, eternally competitive. But that could come crashing down with 1 or 2 bad seasons in a row. And then we're going to have to do that because guess what? The Rays front office will not fork out money to try and speed up that rebuild.
Yeah. And it's just frustrating to watch. And like, I understand that the Rays are a low market team and they make less money than other teams because of the market that they're in. But part of me doesn't even really buy that. Like, are you like I've seen Lightning games. I've seen Bucks games. Like, you can't tell me there's not sports fans that want to come like consume these products. Maybe the marketing's bad. Maybe there's other things that that Stu could be doing to improve some of those profitability things. Doesn't really seem to me like they're doing a lot of that. And again, when you look at the individual people in the roles, like marketing, like if you actually just like watch like things that the Rays put out, it's always excellent. But and this is why it's like, it's a weird thing because like you can't ever really hate something unless you love it. And like part of me, like I can't fully like say that I despise Stu because he employs incredible people. He's obviously very good at hiring people because he's managed to accumulate an incredible amount of talent for that, around him, running his organization. So like, good job. But like, maybe equip the people you've acquired who are excellent with the ability to go above and beyond and do like amazing things, even more so than they're already doing. It's just frustrating to watch. I hope that maybe in the future, but my thought is that Stu's going to wait until they get into this new stadium. He's going to wait to the franchise at like its height of value, and he's going to sell it and be done with it. Maybe in like 5 or 6 years. That's my theory. So we're going to be stuck with this guy at least for another 5 or 6 years, and maybe longer than that. So it is what it is. But thankfully for us, like there's some teams that they have a bad owner and they have to deal with a bad team. We're lucky. We have a kind of a crappy owner, but we have a really good team. So we have that to fall back on because, as much as the frustration that I just like let air out, if you look up and down the Rays roster, it's stacked.
Yeah.
Because Eric Deanna is really good at his job. The bullpen is stacked. The outfield is stacked. The infield stacked. The everything else, the farm system stacked. Like, it's an amazing organization, and it's just frustrating that they're not given the tools to succeed at the level that they maybe could if they were given those resources.
Yeah, luckily you're right that they've kind of made the organization kind of blow it up proof, where it would have to take some serious restructuring to kind of kill this nice culture that we've got going on. But yeah, it would be nice to be able to just once, get a Freddie Freeman or an Ohtani just to take the team up a little bit more,
Yeah, like I just can't get over. Once I saw those numbers this morning, I couldn't get over it. You could literally fit Ohtani's crazy mega deal, and you could pay him the real $70 million every year in the difference. But if you out there want to add an Ohtani or a Freeman or a whomever to your wardrobe, and you have the capital because you're not Stu Sternberg, or not only do you have the capital, but you're willing to use it, unlike Stu Sternberg, and you'd like to improve your wardrobe, you can go to shop.rblrsports.com where you can get 10% off everything with promo code Flappy. You can get amazing shirts. This Acquire, Develop, Dominate, Repeat shirt. Every week I see it, and every week I'm like, I need to get one, and I'm going to be getting someday very soon. You're going to see me in this. You're going to see my shirt, and it's going to show that on there because that's a 6 shirt. I'm going to get one very soon. Love that shirt. Come, if you want to have a shirt like that too, come get that shirt. And you can get the Ohtani and get the Freeman that you need in your wardrobe at shop.rblrsports.com. Promo code Flappy, 10% off everything that you buy there.
The only place you could get a better return on your investment than Ryan Pepio and Johnny DeLuca.
And to help us talk a little bit more as we go into the positive side of things about the return that the Rays get, we have Remy. Remy, how you doing, bud?
I'm doing well. I just, finished my first semester of sophomore year, but doing well. How about you guys?
We are. I'm a little hot in the face, but other than that, great.
Yeah, I'm doing well. I watched my first ever Bucks game today. I watched Hand Egg.
Yeah, be a good one to watch because unfortunately my trash train apparently seems to be stuck in the station because Baker Mayfield decided to be good this year. Whatever. But moving back into baseball, tell us a little bit about some of these guys that the Rays just brought in.
Yeah, so Brian Pepio, he's 26. He's a right-handed pitcher. He's a pronator. He creates above-average extension, but going into his pitches, so he has a very strong fastball shape. He has a really weird, rising gyro slider. It sounds weird. The main thing is it creates a ton of pop-ups, and he is quoted as having the best changeup in the minors. A couple of tweaks that were noticed by me and other Twitter users. He changed his slot. Before he was at a 5.7 release. Then he crept up to 5.9. I think the Dodgers changed something when he was rehabbing with them, and the stuff plus on all his pitches moved around quite a bit. This year, the stuff plus on the fastball was kind of low at 92. Changeup was 148, and then it was a 91 on the slider. So, there are a couple of things that they could make, or a couple of tweaks they could make. I know Rays Metrics is super avid about adding a sinker out of his slot, which is very possible, create weak contacts against right-handed batters. But I think even better would be creating some sort of large, hard curveball shape or a true slider just to create a ton of swing and miss against both left and right-handed batters. And then Johnny DeLuca, you guys probably know a little bit more about him than me. He's a very athletic outfielder. He destroyed a ton of minor league pitching, and he's got a very quiet stance, I've noticed. I know Rays Metrics, he tweeted this out, but I think this is so important to bring up. Since the start of the 2022 season, for batters who have had a K percentage of less than 19 and a slug over 550, Johnny DeLuca's second behind Junior Caminero with 135 WRC plus, with minimum of 600 plate appearances in that time span.
Wow. Those are some fun numbers. After all the unfun we just talked about, there's some really fun stuff there. And I think I love guys that are that archetype of I'm gonna control what I can control. I'm not gonna strike out a whole lot. I'm gonna try to walk as much as I can, and I'm gonna put good contact on the ball. We need as many guys like that as we can. Obviously, the athleticism is nice as we are moving on from Margot to have another guy who is going to be athletic in the outfield, who's going to play good defense. We kind of have a really strong outfield right now. Randy's probably the weak link if we look at the outfield as far as defensively speaking. It's nice to have another guy who we can throw out there that could be a leading defensive replacement if you needed him to be. Nice to have another guy like that out there who could maybe take, for example, if Harold starts for a day in the outfield for whatever reason, nice to know that we do have a guy who can come in and get take a start right there, or a spot, coming in later in the game, and be able to have an impact. So that's really nice to see.
Yeah, 97th percentile sprint speed on DeLuca as well, so he can gas it up. A question I have about Pepio is obviously something that the Rays love about him and love about all of their pitchers is how little they walk guys. He had so few walks last year. He was barely walking anybody. I think he had a 3.1 walk percentage or something that's like that. It was super low. But that wasn't always the case with Pepio. Is there any adjustments other than the arm slot that he made to kind of really help his command out? Because his location plus was off the charts last year.
No, that's a very good question. I think that it's definitely the slider shape, right? I think there's a correlation. The harder you can throw the slider, the more easily controlled it is. That also goes with the bullet shape, that there isn't too much lateral or vertical movement. It stays very flat and it's easy to control to get in zone. So I would assume that definitely did a really great job of just getting him in zone and landing for strikes. As you mentioned with the release point adjustment, I think that the Dodgers probably shifted the mechanics quite a bit just to really just get him to just ride and get it in the zone. But those are the two things I noticed, and I think it's really that slider shape. I also heard something along the lines of the Dodgers turning it into more of a cutter. It's already a cutter now, but they're the Dodgers or Rays, whoever, they're going to lean it more into that like cutter arsenal or cutter profile. That way he can throw that larger breaking ball off of it.
And,
and
my
going
last
into
question.
the
You go.
go ahead.
You go.
Go ahead.
Oh, my last question.
Well, I was just going to
Pepio.
ask,
Rock, paper, scissors. Rock, paper, scissors.
Zach,
the changeup. I was going to ask about the changeup. What makes the changeup really good?
So the changeup, he's able to kill a ton of vert, right? It's able to just drop a ton, and also he creates a lateral break towards his arm side, which is that arm side break. Also, like the shape, all you need to know is it pretty much is like a screwball. Like I don't know exactly how he's getting to it, but he's getting to the inside of the ball, which means that his arm, right? He's pronating. He's really getting into, and that's why it's creating that drop as well as that run. And that's why the spin is so high on the pitch too. It's like averages 2,300 RPM, which, like only a couple of guys, including Devin Williams, can average that on their changeups.
Nice.
Yeah,
and
I think the Rays, we're going to be doing this for the rest of the episode. I think the Rays they're just going to try to create the infinity gauntlet of changeups, which is Shanahan's changeup and now Pepio's changeup. They're just going to get all the best changeups and going to win the World Series that way.
Hopefully get Devin Williams in there, right? Like his changeup is the best pitch in the major leagues, arguably. So that'd be really great. And then Pat, you had another question?
Yeah. Other than, we're going to define the change-up meta because I'm telling you, change-up meta is the way that we're going to win the World Series. But obviously, Pepio was outstanding in limited time last year with, almost sub-2, just above 2 ERA, something nuts like a plus 90% left on base percentage. Hard hit percentage is extremely low, barrel percentage. But obviously, that's probably not going to be exactly his numbers and probably not sustainable coming into 2024. Where do you kind of project Pepio to be kind of production-wise in 2024?
I think I heard on Raise Your Voice, they were saying like the Savale line, like they wanted the trade return to be better than Savale. And I think Pepio is definitely that. He has the potential, in my opinion, to probably be like an ace or a number 2 starter at the very least, just because of like all of the pitch quality. And then if the command can just get somewhat near how it was this year, as opposed to, I think 2022, you were saying it was not great. If he can just do that and maintain health, I can see, honestly, the sky's the limit for him. And I think Neander also talked about like how special Pepio is and how he was like the centerpiece of that trade, as opposed to like, getting a guy like Michael Grove or like Gavin Stone, who are just kind of all right. But Pepio is definitely the best.
Yeah, and I think that, obviously getting a guy like DeLuca along with that is really, really cool. One of the things that just by looking over, Ben mentioned this in our chat. Ben Whitelaw, who is still around, is still chatting with us. He mentioned something about how DeLuca has a really high slug with low exit velo. I'm curious to see. I don't really have an answer for that or why that is the case, but I'm curious to see as we watch him, this year, as we see him play, if he's kind of one of those guys who is just going to be really good at, hitting the baseball and is going to be really good at putting the ball in play and bringing in a lot of, hits that you may not think should be hits, but he does just a really good job of, putting the ball in play. And I'd really like to see that play out. And hopefully we do see that play out.
Yeah, he's definitely very similar, probably to Paredes in that sense. I would have to just make sure that the research is correct, but he's probably a pulled fly ball enjoyer, as they call him, right? He just hits the ball right down the line, and it's a home run, it's a double, it's a triple. But yeah, I think that there was something on Twitter where his pulled fly balls are like crazy high, so that's why he's succeeding with such low exit velos, like Isaac Paredes.
That's music to my ears, I gotta say. And also with speed like that, I'm sure balls that would usually be a single could be stretched to a double or a triple or whatever because he's just that fast. I'm super excited about this return for this trade, and I just am now. When I get new players, I just want to see them now.
Yeah.
So I'm now got to wait like 2-3 months before we get to see him. That's the hard part.
No, it's definitely true. I was going to say really quickly, I don't know if you guys saw, but the Rays signed 2 pitchers to minor league deals, Edwin Uceda and Zach Houston. Just curious if you guys have heard anything about them or are interested at all? Because I mean, I know a little bit about them, but I just wanted to hear what you guys think first.
Usaida is definitely one that I'm interested in. I've heard his name a couple times, and I'm interested to see what he might turn into.
Pat, anything out of those two, or?
Yeah, I don't really know much about Houston, but yeah, Usaida just seems like he's a guy that like is a couple of tweaks away from being super good. He gets a lot of swing and misses. He is really good at avoiding the barrel of the bat. He just can't seem to do it consistently and can't seem to locate his stuff too well. So if he could get his command together, then he could be a really nasty arm out of the bullpen.
Yeah, I saw that. I know for him, like he's creating like very flat vertical approach angles of his. I think it's fastball or sinker shape. They're kind of like the same thing. But one thing he struggled with this year is health. I think he was on the IL like 2 or 3 times, and he spent a ton of time in the minors with multiple different teams. So there's definitely a lot of curiosity from analytically inclined teams about him. I'm very excited to see what they do. I heard someone mentioning like him being a starting pitcher, and I'm like, that's just kind of garbage. But I could see him being like a high leverage arm, maybe squeeze some velocity out of him. And then for Houston, very briefly, you guys are going to like him a lot in spring training. Like he just gets a ton of strikeouts, 27 innings pitched, 46 strikeouts for the AAA affiliate, or for AAA affiliate of the Yankees. He's got a really funky delivery. It's like, I don't know how to describe it. It's very like tap and go, almost like John Curtis, actually. He's like kind of short and hides behind the ball. He's got huge whiffs on his arsenal. And what two pitches that really do well for him are a carry fastball from a lower slot. So he's creating an above average vertical approach angle, which people swing under, I think. And he also has a very big sweeping breaking ball. So he looks very good.
That's exciting. I'm sure like they're going to end up being in the All-Star game, one of those two, just because that's how the Rays do it. They just pick up some guys that like really fly under the radar and then suddenly are like excellent. And then everyone's like, where did these guys come from? And it's like, oh, well, Usaida was on like 6 different teams last year, so you all had your chance.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's just, it goes back to what, as much as I was ranting earlier, the Rays always find excellent talent. They're going to keep bringing in guys. They're going to keep making this team excellent. And I'm just excited to keep watching it. We're kind of in the period now where I'm just like, yeah, I'm ready for the offseason to be done now. I'm ready for baseball to be back. I'm ready to start watching baseball again. And we just have so long yet to go. But it's fun to see these names that are being brought in now that we're going to get to see watch develop. It is one of the fun things about baseball is even though it is sad to lose players, the development part of baseball, I think, is one of the things that makes the sport great. Being able to watch them develop and see these guys, move up and improve into the amazing things that they've become. I think it's just one of the cool things about being a baseball fan. And the Rays create that atmosphere where those guys can make those improvements better than maybe anyone.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of that, I just want to leave us with one last tidbit. Obviously, this trade is part of the Delman Young trade tree, one of the great trade trees of all time.
Yes.
This is the 4th generation of trade tree Delman Young. Out of interest, I'm going to throw a trivia question to everyone listening and to you guys now. How much WAR do you think has been accumulated from players acquired on the Delman Young trade tree?
All time with the Rays since they were brought in with the Rays?
Yeah, across all of the players brought in during their tenure with the Rays, how much WAR has been accrued from players?
100? Like 100 WAR around there?
100 WAR, maybe.
I don't know. I'm just guessing. I think that's a lot, but
shall I give you a hint, Zach, and list the players?
No, I don't need a hint. I believe in myself. This is a bad idea. I should have taken the hint. I'm going to say 68.5.
Okay, so Zach was definitely closer. 100 is a bit ambitious. So overall, the Rays have made 54.9 WAR from players brought in on just the Delman Young trade tree.
That's so impressive.
So to some, for anyone that's not familiar, they originally traded Delman Young for Jason Bartlett and Matt Garza. And Jason Bartlett was then flipped for Adam Russell, Brandon Gomes, the now GM of the Dodgers, Cole Figueroa. I don't know if that factors in. Cole Figueroa, who now works for the Rays org, Cesar Ramos, and then Matt Garza was then traded for Chris Archer, Robinson Chirinos, Brandon Gaia, Sam Fuld, now GM of the Phillies, Hak-Ju Lee. So that was a big trade, the Matt Garza one. Then, of course, Archer was traded for Glasnow, Bars, and Meadows. And now we have Paredes from the Meadows trade as well. And then, of course, Glasnow is now yielding Pepio and DeLuca as well. So it's still ever growing. If we ever trade Paredes or Pepio or Bars or DeLuca, that will get us to the 5th generation Delman Young trade tree.
I think it's a question of when, unfortunately, for a lot of those guys. So
I mean, they're probably going to get traded at some point, no matter what. But we'll see. Well, I'd be curious. It would be curious to or be interesting to look at like some of the larger trade trees in MLB and see which one has generated the most WAR. Maybe that'll be a question and a potential game show that may be returning to the RBLR Rays podcast network sometime in the near future. Hint, 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 hint. And if you want to be here for when that happens, like, subscribe, follow, and share us out with all the other people so they can know when cool things are happening, because cool things are going to be happening very soon. And if you want to keep being a part of all those cool things, like, subscribe, share, continue making us a part of your day. We really appreciate all of you continuing to make us a part of your day and making us a part of your baseball experience. As much as this was kind of a tough episode, there's some really cool things going in the future. Excited to see where all those things, land. And as always, raise up.
Raise up.
Thank you for tuning into this presentation by RBLR Sports. On your way out of the stadium, please remember to like and subscribe.